What's going on, guys? Welcome to Journey to the Moon. The market cap is back under 100 billion. So right now it's at 100 billion, but right before I shot the video, it was at 98 billion. So today is June 15th, 2017, and just 24 hours ago, the market cap was sitting at 116 billion. So 116 billion or 18 billion left the market, the total cryptocurrency market, which results in a lot of red, a lot of big red. So I'm just gonna go to the gainers here, and as you can see, there's only 4 coins in the green, and just everything else is red, red, red. But in reality, I mean, Tether doesn't really count, right? Because it usually stays pegged to the dollar. So there's only 4 coins in the green. When you look at it. So I was thinking, it reminded me of 3 weeks ago when 30 billion left the market cap, but as a an investor, it makes me think, like, how can you protect yourself from massive amounts of money leaving the crypto space and not watch your portfolio go down? So I was thinking and thinking, and it just made me realize that there's really nothing you can do, because one, let's say you call the top, the top was 117 billion. You would have to have cashed out to protect yourself from all this -20, -30 of your portfolio. But then that means that you're pretty much done with crypto, because when you cash out to USD, you got to pay capital gains tax. So if let's say you got in January, you got in February, and you had super strong positions, you made a lot of money, you made your money, and you're ready to go on summer vacation, you're like, hey, look, man, I'm gonna cash out, I made my money, then that makes sense. Or I'm gonna take profits. But for people that are still trying to reach their goals or reach their moon view, it's like, what do you do? Right? So when on May 27th, when the cryptocurrency market went down 30 billion from 90 billion to that 65 billion, when it went down, selling was the worst thing I could have done, right? Because all the gains I made, I would have lost, and then I would have converted to USD. It would have been terrible. But I kept holding. But let's say, like, today, I was looking at it. It started off at 116 billion. Right? Oh, it started off at 116 billion, and then I start seeing it, let's say, like, right here. Oh, 10 billion left the market cap. It's time for me to just cash out. I'm gonna take my money and run. And now we're right, because then it went down another 10 billion. I would have to have paid the capital gains tax on whatever I cashed out. But if I just kept holding, hopefully crypto goes up. Let's say it recovers. Let's say it recovers again. I hope it does. No one can really call the top or call the bottom. But unless you made the money you wanted to make, there was your best thing you could have done. The only option you have is to hold. Because if you sell, that means you're pretty much done playing the crypto game, right? Man, look, it did go down 20 billion, 116, and then all the way to 96. That's 20 billion, and who knows? It could go down more, right? But then it got me thinking, where from well, actually, I saw these tweets right here. Bitcoin is crashing, right? It happens every month. And Peter Brand is saying, sometimes no position is the best position. A compulsion to trade leads to disaster. So, I mean, there really is no safe haven in the crypto space. Now, as I'm looking at it, like, as I look at it from, like, the big picture, as I step away and look at the whole cryptocurrency market, a couple things stand out to me is Bitcoin and Ethereum. Even though 116 billion left the market, there is still only an 8 billion difference between the two, right? Because when the market cap was 116 billion, they were still both 8 billion away. Like my last video was specifically talking about that, where Ethereum is only 8 billion away from taking over Bitcoin. And look at the volume. The volume is only 100,000 difference. So I do find that interesting that even though 16 billion left, these two stayed 8 billion apart. Another thing I noticed is just look at everybody else though. It's like it's pretty much these two going at it for dominance. And then everybody else doesn't really matter. I mean, Ripple is 20 billion away from even being second place, or not even. Even if you add 20 billion, it's still under Ethereum. And let's say this is 10 billion. If you multiply that times, you have to multiply that times 4 just so you can edge out Bitcoin. So Ripple has to multiply it times 4, which would make a dollar Ripple. Right? I'm sure a lot of people would be happy if Ripple went to $1, but I mean that's how vast it is, that gap. And then everybody else is just, I mean, it doesn't really matter to some extent. Where, you know, if you look at Litecoin, you multiply that times 10, you're sitting at 14 billion and a $280 Litecoin. But that's still only half of Ethereum. Or even with ETC, you multiply it times 10, you're looking at 16 billion Ethereum, ETC, Ethereum Classic, 16 billion, and it'll be 170, but that still would be half of Ethereum. So it just goes to show how far away just everybody else is. So I do find that very interesting. Now, speaking of going on vacations and cashing out, and you know what, I'm protecting myself from the bear market. Okay, if you got in January, February, and you made a lot of money and you're ready to pay your capital gains tax, then that's fine. You know, do what you want. But even from a philosophical standpoint, there's an argument of that Bitcoin is a hedge against a collapse, right? So there's people that, you know, I follow, like the Sovereign Man, and he talks about all the debt the government has and the trillions of dollars in debt, and you know, he talks about a lot of stuff. I do like his blog of all this, you know, banks aren't safe and, you know, wealth preservation. He talks about a lot of stuff, right? I'm not getting into all the politics or the fudding or whatever. Another guy I follow is Jeff Berwick, and he's a little more entertaining, I guess, or I'm not saying less passionate, but he does get into it a little more. And you know, the dollar collapse and the bubbles and the governments, you know, all this stuff. So you know, it's interesting, and I do read these guys and follow these guys. But the point is that Bitcoin is the hedge, right? Buy gold, buy precious metals, gold and silver, buy gold before the financial system fails and all this. So with that being said, it's almost like, why would you convert if you honestly believe that USD is gonna fail and you don't trust your government? You will be holding Bitcoin as a hedge. So why would you cash out? Right? You say, hey, I think the government's gonna collapse, the dollar's gonna collapse, but I'm gonna trade my Bitcoin for fiat. Like, why would you do that? Bitcoin is the hedge, just like gold and silver is the hedge. So from a philosophical standpoint, it doesn't really make sense to cash out. Now, like I said, I'm not gonna get into the conspiracy theories or anything like that. But when I was watching the Bitcoin Meister, pound that like button if you like the Bitcoin Meister, I was watching to him, and they were talking about this guy here, Maximo, and he was saying how we all know what's going on with Venezuela, all the was it the Bolivar? right? All the financial struggles Venezuela is going through, and you all know about what's going on with Venezuela, right? So he's saying how they use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, as opposed to gold and silver, or when like the Walking Dead scenario, or the apocalypse scenario from everyday transactions, they rather use Bitcoin as a hedge instead of USD or the Bolivar, or even gold and silver, right? So he kind of says that here, and then I guess they go at it back and forth here. Um, but it's pretty much they can't get to gold and silver, but it makes sense though to some extent, where if you have a bar of gold, you're not gonna be walking around with a bar of gold, or a gold coin, which is $120, $1,200, or an ounce of gold, and it's, unless you're gonna like shave it down and here's some gold dust, or it kind of makes hard to transact, to do 1 ounce transactions of gold, as opposed to breaking up Bitcoin. And then he pretty much says, the point I'm trying to make is Bitcoin is not as worthless as some people may think in a tough situation, right? So I do find that interesting, and this is a real world example of worst case scenario hits just the fan, that hey, Bitcoin is a hedge, right? But enough with the doom and gloom. Let's use Bitcoin now, right? Bitcoin. I saw this where the reporter was trying to use Bitcoin in everyday transactions, from buying ice cream to getting around town, buying food. And she's in New York, and New York is supposed to be a world leader to some extent. It's a world city, but it was hard to find places that accepted Bitcoin. And even when they did, there was like a 30%, 40% premium on places that accepted Bitcoin. So even a major world city like New York made it hard for everyday transactions of Bitcoin, which I found it interesting. So I mean, obviously, if she was in Japan, I think she would have had an easier time in Japan, besides the language barrier. But Japan seems more open to using Bitcoin. But then those premiums were not helping, and we all know the story of the guy, buying, what was it, the pizza with 10,000 Bitcoin. So let's say, for example, you could buy a pizza with 1 Ethereum, right? You get a large pizza for $17. Cool. But what if, I'm just saying, what if a year from now, Bitcoin, Ethereum Classic is worth $170? And it's like, man, I would have just held on to my Ethereum. That was an expensive pizza. But even from, this is an older article, but even from a merchant standpoint, they tried using Bitcoin and they just kept having problems where it just kept crashing, and they winded up, was not sustainable. Every 20 transactions, the platform would stop working, and we had to renegade. Bitcoin as a method of payment was not sustainable, so they just went to Dash. They winded up going to Dash because Bitcoin, from a merchant standpoint, couldn't handle the load. Even from a consumer standpoint, it's not ready. But it's still the number one. It's still king. It's still king, and Dash is over here at number 8. Anyway, I just find it very interesting. But like I said, unless you really made the money you wanted to make, and you're ready to pay capital gains tax, there's really no point of cashing out. And even from the philosophical standpoint that Bitcoin is a hedge against the dollar collapsing, why would you convert to USD if you're trying to protect yourself from the dollar collapsing, right? So, as I see it again, all you could do is have strong hands, hold, But in general, the whole crypto space is not ready. The whole crypto space is still young. It's still in its infancy, a bubble or not. If the number one guy, the king, can't be used in day-to-day consumer transactions or merchant transactions, and he's the face of cryptocurrency, you know, none of these guys are even in the billion-dollar range. When you think about it, in Ethereum, it's all about at this point, many say it's just about ICOs and the pumps. If it wasn't for ICOs, it wouldn't be pumping. And a lot of people don't even see Ripple as a crypto. They see it as, you know, something of bank technology. So it's just very, very interesting where fourth, fifth, sixth, all these combined. Look at that. Just you combine these guys, combine the top 8 or the third or 10th place, and you still don't get Ethereum. And it's very interesting, but yes, my portfolio's down, but I'm gonna hold. I'm gonna hold because I'm not ready to cash out. Oh man, buy, sell, or hold. Let me know what you're gonna do. Until then, I'll see you on the moon.